China will further open up to foreign investment, according to a government work report released on Monday. How will these plans create the long-awaited level playing field for foreign investors? And Italy's parliamentary election results are in, and the established parties are on the way out. What's next for Italy's government, and will this wave of populism turn the tide for the country? Welcome to The Point. Live from Beijing, I'm Li Xi. China promised to open further to foreign investors and liberalize trade and investment. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said this on Monday in a government work report delivered to the first session of the 13th National People's Congress, the country's top legislature. China has been reiterating this commitment in recent years, especially since Chinese President Xi Jinping highlighted the vision of building a so-called community with a shared future for humankind last October. So how much more will China open up, and how far is China from building an equal environment for both domestic and foreign investors? Joining me for the discussion today are Professor Liu Baocheng, Director of the Center for International Business Ethics at the University of International Business and Economics, and Claire Pearson, International Development Director at the global law firm DLA Piper and former chair of the British Chamber of Commerce in China. Welcome to both of you. When answering questions from journalists, officials from China's top government department, the National Development and Reform Commission, or NDRC, said China is still working on attracting more foreign investment, and the officials listed actions such as making sure that foreign companies are equal footing and broadening market access. Among the things that he listed, what kind of actions have got your attention the most, Professor Liu?
I think number one is the broad-based participation or accessibility by foreign investment in the general manufacturing industry, and also the particular attraction to the high-tech manufacturing and also for the IT industry, and then to push forward more foreign investment into the Chinese central and western region. And more importantly, I think it's to really proliferate the good experience drawn from the free trade zone, and particularly with a focus on expanding the negative list, so that really provides better access and hopefully equal access for foreign participation in China.
Claire, what was your takeaway from that, these plans?
I mean, the part that I find most interesting is a sort of bringing down of walls, like the special economic zone in Shenzhen is no longer going to be so special. They're going to be allowed to proliferate across the country. I think this is going to give increased opportunity, particularly in three sectors: innovative technology sectors, green energy, healthcare. So I think it's a very good time for foreign business to look for new opportunities.
Well, one question about what is China's expectation, because according to official statistics, China attracted $131 billion in foreign direct investment last year. That is a record high, and it is also the second highest in the world. So what is in for China to open further and attracting more foreign direct investment? Professor
Well, figuratively, we have the open door policy. Now we need to open the fence, so to pave the right way for the courtyard. And previously, we attract foreign investment based on the cheap labor and even lower environmental standard. But right now, it is really the China market. It is really the high end of the China market that really attract foreign investment. And on the other hand, it's not only open the door, but also we are participating in the whole globalization process, and to push forward the Chinese ODI instead of only attracting the ODI, mean overseas direct investment from China. So this is really a two-way traffic. It's getting more interwoven and equally more interdependent with the rest of the world.
Yeah, but hearing from these announcements and these different sayings, do you think these would satisfy the expectations of foreign investors who have been complaining that China has not been open enough?
It can never satisfy because expectation always goes further than what is delivered. So and also there are lobbyist groups, interest groups pushing China, and there is also a paradox that those who are on the bus, they do not want you to sell more tickets, which means those who are already in China, they want to be in a monopolistic position. They do not really welcome more competitors to come to fight another share of the market. And of course, China has many of its own problems that we need really to strike a very delicate balance between our development levels and also between very different interest groups.
Claire, your take?
I think for foreign investors out there, I'd say 3 words: raise your game. When you come to China, it's not like it was 10, 15 years ago. It's not make it quickly, sell it cheap. It's moved from made in China to designed and made in China. So you've got to look for new types of joint venture here. You've got to respect the intellectual property that is originating in the country. And you've got to collaborate with those entrepreneurs to bring the products to new markets in Europe, in the US, in South America, in Africa. If the foreigners who are coming in now can see China through a new lens, through a new stage of development, there are opportunities for win-wins. I've just come back from DC, and one guy, he said to me, he said, every conversation in Washington starts on a different topic, ends on China. And I found that to be completely true. Everyone's obsessed with the market but not sure how to access.
What about this complaint that has been there for a while, that the playing field has not been level? Of course, China can do more, right, as Chinese economy grow further. Professor Liu, what kind of measures have been announced to tackle that problem?
Well, psychologically, what is already obtained is no longer a motivation. So therefore, all those benefits, privileges offered to foreign investment are taken for granted. But in addition, they would ask for more. Well, I do not mean that there is no justification for them to ask for more, but one area is the transparency. There is cultural reason, there is historical reason, but the lack of transparency and lack of consistency in terms of policy and the ambiguity between policy and law are still really the major stumbling block that are really dragging the feet. And the other is even the rule by law is being strengthened, but there is a huge gap between legislation and enforcement. And the other is that different local governments, they provide very different attitude, very different interpretation to the same set of rules and laws. Right. So these are really confusing factors.
Right. Are there anything being done to, for instance, at least enforce the existing rules on the same level of strength?
Well, one typical measure is we produce more rules to interpret, to reinforce the previous rules. And the other, of course, seriously, really to enhance the capacity of different government agencies so that they can understand more correctly the objectives of the policy instead of merely, reading the superficial terms. And the other is really to have a better coordination now that we have the blessing of the internet technology, so we may be able to really strike more of a compliance in enforcement and also in service. And the other is that we welcome pressure, actually. Many of those progresses are made
because of these pressure.
Because of the pressure. Well, international community are pushing China, and also China is in the same time a very quick learner to be able to accept and then even to enjoy many of those terms and conditions that are universally applicable.
Claire, your experience from working in China for so many years?
Yeah, I think you make a good point. It's sort of a refiner's fire at the moment. There's been so much pressure in the economy in the last 10 years. But one thing I've noticed is, for example, we had clients like Ping An 15 years ago, and they're a relatively small insurance company then. Today, they're maybe the world's largest insurance company. So all I've seen, my own experience has been, before the Asia offices in our law firm used to run at a deficit. Now they contribute 1/3 of the profits to the company, and this is a global firm. And I've noticed HSBC, since their pivot to Asia, which they executed in 2015, 75% of that British bank's earnings are coming from Asia. Unless companies have a pivot to Asia, and more specifically China, they really don't have much of a future because of the market. But I am concerned about the economic apartheid that is coming up. I've just been in DC. I went to the press club. China's not there. I went to an Asia meeting. China wasn't at the table because they're not allowed to be members. What is that? I went to a peace conference. Everybody was an expert on China, but nobody was Chinese. You know,
this is unlikely to change. And whose fault is this?
This has got to change.
Well, China is busy doing the work instead of doing the talk. Hi, guys.
DC is Disneyland for democracy.
Right.
Okay. But no, it produces anything.
Let's forget about that for the moment. But
that's an important point, the communication skills from China.
Absolutely.
You know, a lot of policies and a lot of work done are really, serving the interests of the global community. But lack of communication skills really put China in a very passive position.
However, there are people, especially in Europe, since I recently talked to a very high-ranking representative of the European Union here in China. He says a lot of business people have been experiencing a kind of promise fatigue from China, saying they have been hearing this kind of commitment to level the playing field and, open up further, reform further, and yet what they see is nowhere near what has been promised. Professor Liu, do you think it's again a matter of expectation, psychology, or communication, or what China has really underperformed to deliver its promises?
I think one is really expectation gap, and business people always come with a micro view. So I want this, and I want my arbitration done in 3 months. So, but from the Chinese policymakers, they have more of a macro view. So I really look at the whole entire picture. I look at 10 years later what is going to happen. But as a scholar, I could see that China has made remarkable progress with many milestones. For example, we only opened the sector for manufacture. Now, service are there, financial market are there, and we only opened the 4 special economic zones, and then 5, and then 14 new ports. But now, we are opening all China for foreign participation. And also in terms of the equity position, we have also been pushing the envelope to allow more participation. And the localization process for multinationals are also tremendously, making progress.
Right. Well, I just have maybe 1 more minute left, but Claire, let me ask you this. How do you see the need to balance the protection of its domestic industry, which is still growing, or still trying to catch up, and to provide more opportunities from foreign investors?
I think integration's the only answer. I think increasingly we've got to see Chinese on the boards of multinational companies, because at the moment people are setting Chinese strategy in an information vacuum.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, important topic, but we are limited by time. So many thanks to my 2 guests, Professor Liu Baocheng, Director of the Center for International Business Ethics at the University of International Business and Economics, and Claire Pearson, International Department Director at the global law firm DLA Piper and former chair of the British Chamber of Commerce here in China. And you're watching The Point. We'll be back right after this short break. Stay with us. Italy's general elections have ended in a political deadlock of a hung parliament. After Sunday's election, no one party or alliance gained the 40% necessary to have an absolute parliamentary majority. The latest results show a centre-right coalition hovering at 37% in both houses of parliament, while the populist Five Star Movement stood at almost 1/3, and a centre-left coalition led by the ruling Democratic Party trailed at less than a quarter of the votes. Matteo Renzi, the leader of the centre-left party, was forced to resign on Monday after the worst showing in his party's history. So what do these results mean for Italy, and what's the bigger picture story for EU when Eurosceptic, populist and far-right parties gain increasing influence in elections? I'm joined from Rome, Italy by Professor Irene Caratelli, Director of the International Relations Program at the American University of Rome, and here in the Beijing studio by Francesco Sisci from the Center for European Studies at Renmin University. Welcome to both of you. Professor Caratelli, now the centre-left Democratic Party received less than a quarter of the votes, while the populist Five-Star Movement and the anti-immigrant Lega, or the League Party, did much better than expected. So what story do these results tell about Italy today?
Well, it seems clear that people in Italy sent a strong message to politicians that seemingly were only representing their own interests. That is, people said, well, maybe we have to send those elites back, those elites that are representing themselves or the institutions they were working for, or the European Union, but they're not representing our interests in terms of employment, in terms of welfare. Therefore, all those anti-system movement or parties that have not been in government have exploded. If you look at the polls just 4 years ago, in 2014, the Democratic Party, where Renzi was the leader, had more than 40%, and now it's under the threshold of the 20%. That's quite a strong message, and those movement and parties that gained and exploded, one in the north, because the centre-right with the Lega exploded in the centre and the north of Italy, where the Five-Star Movement won in the centre-south, have been anti-systemic forces, anti-traditional party forces, and anti-European forces. People resorted to them for answers. Very simple answers, but they looked for them.
Right. Mr. Sisci, as a country that once had Western Europe's most robust political left for a century, why is Italy shifting to the right?
Perhaps it's not exact to say right or left, because many people of the Five-Star Movement actually come from the left, and they claim to be left-wingers. However, I would go back to what you said before. I think now Italy felt hopeless. There was no party except those populist parties which tried to give hope to the common people. There is 40% unemployment, young unemployment in the south of Italy, and in northern Italy there is, the economy is faring better, but they are scared of immigration. And overall, there is no idea about what Italy should do, what Europe should do. And then there are two strong messages. One from this M5 movement saying that people should be entitled to some kind of life welfare, and another message from the Northern League saying we should keep foreigners, outsiders out. Very simple messages to the belly of the people, message to people who are scared and don't have hope, and somebody gave hope, and that's what the answer was.
Well, as a result of the new electoral law passed in October, Professor Caratelli, Italians on Monday woke up to headlines screaming, Italy is ungovernable. Now it seems an allied government is inevitable. What's the next step? What is the most likely coalition to be formed?
This is a very interesting question. There is no straight answer to that, because the Five-Star Movement claimed repeatedly that it would not look for a coalition government, and the same did the leader of the Lega, Salvini, and the same did the Democratic Party. Now, of course, what political leaders say during the campaign is completely different what they do once they are offered the possibility to govern the country. But now the leader of the Democratic Party, Renzi, said he would not resign from the head of the party until the new government will take power. That is to say, we would not I want to assure my electorate that we will not support a five-star movement government. Therefore, it might be very difficult, although more left-wing sectors came out saying that they would support a five-star movement government. So I think now the puzzle is in the hands of the President of the Republic, Sergio Mattarella. However, it's not impossible to conceive the possibility of new elections. That should not be ruled out, at least.
Mr. Sischi, given the current situation or the uncertainty that we are seeing, what is the biggest risk for Italy now?
I think the biggest risk is that a government is not in place very soon. Then, of course, if a government is not in place very soon, there is a possibility that interest rates would go up, and there would be greater fear and economic tightening up, greater pressure on the euro, greater pressure on interest rates in Italy, and then things could spiral up to greater financial crisis coming from Italy. Also because now we are in a very delicate situation in Europe. The government in Germany has not been formed, although we hope that soon we will be formed, but still there is no government in Germany. Britain threatens to still go out of Brexit, so we are in a very delicate position, and Italy could well be the trigger of bigger problems all over Europe.
Professor Caratelli, your take on the same question?
So, well, basically, you mean on the kind of scenario we would have?
The risk, the biggest risk.
With one of those parties in power.
The biggest risk facing Italy now?
Well, I think the biggest risk, yes, is the unpredictability. I think that both politically and economically, Italy is not able to sustain very weak and governments who don't know what to do in Italy and in Europe. We have seen what happened in Greece. That there is no playing with the fire when we are talking about the participation of Italy in the European Monetary Union, whereas Salvini and the Lega Nord have been tempted and have been talking about exiting the European Union, exiting the European Monetary Union, and the same for the five-star movement until very recently, where apparently all these claims have been left aside. So the biggest issue, I think, is that both the five-star movement and the Lega Nord don't have really a government plan. They're not government forces. They were anti-government forces, so they have issues, but they have no idea of what a common foreign security policy should be in the European Union, or a foreign policy for a state, for what it matters. So I think that the risk Italy faces is really what kind of offer do the forces that actually took all those votes have to propose a credible policy that would not really put Italy under the pressure of markets, as was said previously correctly, which would actually make the avenues for Italy even smaller. Because of course, if the pressure will mount, then the ability, the kind of choices that Italy will have in front will be much less.
Right. Let's talk about
other countries.
Let's talk about another very important issue which concerns immigration. For instance, this is also a key issue where Italy might have a different position with the European Union. For instance, the five-star movement and the Lega, they are performing better and as expected, as I said, and in terms of people's enthusiasm about unity in the EU, this is raising question. So should Brussels be concerned about these results, Professor Sischi?
Well, yes, I think Brussels is concerned already, and immigration, of course, is a big issue. We had a very effective government in the last few months, in the last year or so, I would say. And this was done, the results was achieved through difficult negotiations with some forces in Libya, with allies, etc. Can a new government with people with no experience or little experience in the subject achieve the same results? It's difficult, we don't know, lots of problems, I would say.
Professor Caratelli, now right-wing parties have been using anti-immigrant rhetoric to gain votes. Berlusconi says he'd deport 600,000 illegal immigrants from Italy and send soldiers into the streets to help the police. And Salvini, who's leading the Lega, said that Italy needs mass cleansing, street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood. And these are obviously against the values of the EU. So how will such frictions impact things?
This is a very important point. Of course, the rhetoric when you're not in government, it will be different. I would like to make a couple of fingers regarding this issue and the comment that preceded me. That is, of course, Italy has been left alone dealing with migrants, and the European Union has not done its role. Mostly, and the Dublin agreements about the relocation of migrants have not been respected by many European member states. That is, Italy has been left alone, bearing in mind that Italy is mainly a bridge to migration. That is, migrants arrive to Italy to go to Germany, to go to France, to go to England, not to stay in Italy. That is, it's clearly a disaster to try to treat migration as a national issue when it's clearly a transnational issue. Having said this, Italy has been managing migration for quite some while better than other countries. The agreements with Libya have been quite problematic, as we have seen that the condition of people detained in Libya were almost equal to slavery. So even that raises an issue about European values. So regarding the ability of the new forces to deal with migration, I have huge doubts. And the rhetoric of the cleansing of migrants is absurd, clearly. There is a confusion between who has the right to stay and who has not the right to stay in Italy. And plus, the repatriation policy that has been proposed by Salvini, also by Silvio Berlusconi, would be much more expensive than integrating the migrants in the Italian economy, given also that Italy has an aging population, and there is a need for a part of those migrants who are coming. So it doesn't seem that those parties have an idea of what the issue is, and also especially the fact that this is not a national issue, it's a transnational issue that needs transnational answers. So the question is that those parties try to give very simple answers to very complex phenomena.
Okay, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much. We're running out of time. Professor Irene Caratelli, Director of the International Relations Program at the American University of Rome, and Francesco Sisci from the Center for European Studies at Renmin University. And that is it for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. We've got The Point.